the Royal Marines have seized a sanctioned Russian shadow fleet tanker in the English Channel in a dramatic nighttime operation. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, described it as another blow to Russia and said it reminds those fuelling Putin's war in Ukraine that they cannot hide. So let's have a look at the pictures. They've just come in the last few minutes. According to the Ministry of Defence, in the first UK-led operation of its kind, the vessel Smirtos was boarded by Royal Marine Commandos and specially trained law enforcement officers from the National Crime Agency. Despite Russia's best efforts to evade sanctions and continue fueling its barbaric war with Ukraine, the military operation, which lasted 6 hours, was supported with aircraft from the maritime air groups, such as Chinooks, Merlin Mk4 and Wildcats, an RAF P-8 aircraft, as well as HMS Sutherland and HMS Ledbury. Well, speaking on Sky News this morning, the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, paid tribute to the Royal Marines.
One of the ways that Putin is funding the war in Ukraine is to operate what is called a shadow fleet, which is able to transport goods, particularly oil, through waters that they would otherwise be barred from sailing in. And this morning, what we've done is intercept one of those shadow fleet vessels and detained that in order to disrupt the funding source of that unlawful war. It's one of the instructions that the Prime Minister gave quite early on, was that he wanted us to be on the front foot, taking that sort of decisive action in order to keep the country safe and to deal with the threat posed by Russia. And this morning we've been able to successfully do that. I want to pay tribute to all of the Navy officers and others who've been involved in doing that. That is no small achievement, but it is also a significant blow to the Russians.
One of our, according to your press release, 700 of the Russian shadow fleet. So in perspective, that it's the first one we have seized of 700 or so ships operating in this way, and it's 2026. The war began in 2022.
Yeah, but I think that shows the seriousness with which we're taking this, because it's not easy to do. We've been determined to do it because cutting off the funding for the action in Ukraine is one of the central ways that we will make sure that Ukraine wins the war, and that we stand by them to do that and then to win the peace as well.
Our Security and Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes, joins me now. And Deborah, we've just been seeing the pictures of the raid of the British forces landing on that ship, that Shadow Fleet vessel. What do you make of those pictures? Because it looks really dramatic, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you can see those Chinook helicopters are what the Royal Marines are travelling in. And obviously this operation happened overnight, so it happened in the early hours of this morning. So that's why the images are very grainy and dark. But you can make out Royal Marines fast roping from the helicopters onto the deck of the vessel. It's the kind of operation they would use when they do not believe that there is a threat of armed attack from the vessel. Obviously, you don't want helicopters coming close if they could be shot down. So clearly, they'd established that there wasn't that kind of threat. They could approach from the air. Then you've got the Royal Marines fast roping down onto the deck. And then immediately, you can see they're very heavily armed. They've got night vision goggles. And you can see them. They're also operating with the National Crime Agency specialists. And I've seen the police as well. They have got the ability to be able to board ships off the English coast. They're specially trained. And then you can see them fanning out into the deck of the tanker where they are moving. You can see them door to door, checking. Obviously, they don't know who is potentially on board. They'll think that they'll know it's a crew, but clearly they won't know everything. And so they'll be wanting to establish whether there is any threat on that ship. It's a Cameroon-flagged tanker. The British clearly believe it's part of Russia's shadow fleet carrying sanctioned oil as part of Russian efforts to bypass international sanctions and continue to fund its war effort. That's the justification for this raid. But you can see the Marines spreading out on this tanker. The absolute immediate operational goal will be to take control of the vessel, and as soon as they've got control of the vessel, they've detained the crew, then it would be a case of moving the tanker to where they want to put it. And we've been told by the Ministry of Defence they want to anchor it off the south coast of England. And then the personnel on board, the crew, we haven't had any detail yet on them, how many they are, what nationality they are. Clearly that's going to be a matter for the Home Office. The Department for Transport as well now takes the lead in terms of what next for this tanker. But the military operation, as you can see, it's, like you say, it looks pretty dramatic. It's obviously not something that anyone can do. The British military, the Royal Marines in particular, have been training for this operation for a long time. They do this kind of thing anyway, because obviously they've been trained to intercept suspicious vessels. They do a lot of counter-narcotics operations in the Caribbean. But clearly this is a new expansion of the mission. The Prime Minister said in March that he was giving permission to British forces to exactly do this, board sanctioned Russian vessels. But this is the first time it's happened, and obviously it's happening after an incredibly dramatic domestic defence week with the resignation of the Defence Secretary, and clearly there will be those that will be wondering, is this just politics, given the Prime Minister is really fronting the fact that this has happened? I'm not sure that is the case. Operations like this don't just happen and get turned on overnight. I imagine they'd have been planning for a while, probably even the departing Defence Secretary and departing Armed Forces Minister. Surely they'd have been aware of this happening. So I don't know if that is the case or not, but clearly it really demonstrates for the Ministry of Defence why credible and capable armed forces are necessary, which they'll be hoping people around the Cabinet perhaps are watching, given that the previous Defence Secretary has literally just quit, saying that his colleagues aren't willing to spend enough on defence, and warning that the kind of operation that you're seeing carried out overnight tonight is last night is the sort of thing that maybe the British won't want to be able to do in future if they aren't properly funded, because there's going to be a reaction from Russia, you'd expect. Most likely it will be angry words, but this is the UK taking action, not acting passively, choosing to board this vessel, and clearly it's not something that Vladimir Putin's going to be welcoming.
Certainly not. Deborah Haynes, thank you very much indeed.